Hello, everyone. Nick Flood, head of product at Denis, and I just want to start off by talking about Simon's piece, actually, and just how grim that sounded. But it feels like, as with everything, the publishers and us here and our editorial teams, the sales team, are really in the middle. You've got the IAB, you've got IO, you've got the agencies, you've got the trading desks, you've got the rest of the AdBlock community all putting pressure on the publisher, who is stuck in the middle and has to ultimately come up with a solution. But what I think, and what we think at Denis, it kind of comes on to Simon's point, is that it's about building that value exchange with the user and starting that piece of dialogue. So what a lot of people haven't done so far to date is actually talk to the users and understand what they want. There's been a lot of great surveys out there, IB included, but really, when it comes down to it, each site and each audience is completely different. So where do we stand as a Denis Portfolio? And for those who aren't actually familiar with Denis, we have about 15 big sites in 4 core verticals: motoring, current affairs, tech, and lifestyle. So we see about 14% AdBlock rate across all our verticals, across all platforms and all geos. And to put that into context, that is a big number when us, as a premium publisher, are still commanding CPM rates of £40 plus. So we've got page yields of over £100 in some instances, with millions of users and millions of page impressions going unmonetized. And it's not just your DFP integration in terms of serving ads, it's your it's your DMP integration, it's your Selligent data capture piece, it's any other piece of ad tech event that you've got being served to the user, who's also got the privacy block enabled on their AdBlock Plus config page. So it's been mentioned quite a bit, actually, about how AdBlock rates have actually plateaued. This is actual Denis data across our portfolio. So we've seen rates from start of Jan going from just under 22%, to just over 21%, and really, the data has plateaued. There are some sites, especially with a younger audience, where the line has gone up ever so slightly, but luckily we have a slightly older demographic, especially in some of our automotive verticals, where that number is a lot lower. So even looking at UK desktop rates, we see numbers of about 15%, which is really good. If you go back to 2014, 2013, that number was shooting up, and obviously everyone was panicked and whatnot, and it made BBC News at 10, and my mum, who's 66, was asking me how to install an ad blocker, and I told her not to. So this doesn't concern me as much. There's a dialogue that we need to have with the users, but really, if you look at it in terms of mobile growth, desktop growth is declining. The majority of our brands are increasing about 40% year on year in terms of mobile usage, while desktop is dropping. If we look at mobile AdBlock rates across our portfolio, we see they've grown from about 1% to just under 2%. Some sites in our portfolio have a mobile AdBlock rate of up to 7%, but they're predominantly in the tech space. Once again, the older audience generally doesn't install AdBlock devices or extensions that cause issues. Overlaid on top of this, as I mentioned, there is a fundamental shift to mobile. I don't need to tell you guys that. So this issue, in a couple of years, will become massive. It's just one line of JavaScript for everyone who works in any type of supplier relationship. The amount of times you hear this would be unbelievable. It's definitely not. I can't even begin to tell you the amount of effort, time, and attention that it takes to get it right. So yes, you can start tracking your AdBlock use or your users' AdBlock use with a bit of JavaScript, and understand the percentages, understand the time of day and the geos and everything else about them. But really, to start messaging those users requires constant attention and development. We are working at Denis with a provider called SourcePoint, although obviously we speak to PageFair and various others. There's Resonance in the room as well. And I would encourage you all to speak to them. All offer something slightly different, but we've had to dedicate significant resource to this because it's a fundamental problem for us. If you factor back that 14% to the kind of CPMs that we achieve, even through our predominant direct sale business, you can start to extrapolate out a significant amount of value that we're missing. Just give you some examples of some of the tests we've run to date. This is a Catfish example, so taking one of our brands, The Week. The Week does about 6 million uniques a month. So using source point technology, which allows us to start talking to the user for a variety of different means. It can be different modals, different positions, different messages. We see these kind of engagement rates, 3.5%. It's terrible, isn't it? And this is off a cohort of about 10%. And what our platform that we've integrated through the source point technology allows us to do is to create these cohorts. So you may have 10% of users seeing this message and actually instigate an action. So here we've got 2 actions for the user. They can either disable their ad blocker or continue with ads. If they disable their ad blocker, they're shown a nice little video which shows them how to do it, but the drop-off rate is phenomenal. It's like 95%. If they click continue with ads, we instigate ad recovery. So a user doesn't even have to whitelist the site. They just serve the ads back in. And these aren't just JPEGs or GIFs. These are the actual ad tags that are provided by the agency. As a counter to that, look what the hard block does. So 80% of people continue and engage with that unit. They don't just disappear off the site. And again, here we're giving users 2 different choices. They can either continue with ads or disable their ad blocker. Message does make a difference here. On the first one, you can be really intricate. I mean, Denis is kind of ultimately owned by a charity, so all our profits go into planting trees. Got a lovely ethical message there. It doesn't make any difference. But here, 8-to-2 ratio of people actually click continue with ads versus disable ad blocker. And what does that tell you? It tells you that actually whitelisting is a hard thing to do. You have to go into your options menu, your AdBlock Plus menu, and save that site. Especially for a lot of us with transient audiences, that could be good, but ultimately what we need to do is actually serve ads to the user there and then when they're on the site. So what I've done is come up with a bit of a checklist just for publishers in the room. Just make sure that you're actually doing this now before it's too late. So make sure you're tracking accurately. The number of times I talk to people who are still tracking just via a standard GA event tag, that doesn't work. To start off with, 20% of that audience are going to be blocked. And the JavaScript blocking that you'll get, you just can't accurately check. You cannot also track the cohort of that user if they come back to the site, if they've disabled or enabled their ad blocker. Speak to all the suppliers. So we've taken the decision to work with SourcePoint because they've got a nice SaaS product where they can control my messages and create cohorts. You've got Pagefair in the room who do the ad recovery piece and the messaging piece as well. And you've got Resonance who have their free rule products, all of which have different commercial opportunities and interact with the user in a slightly different way. There is no one solution. I don't think. Each site, especially in our verticals, requires slightly different messages, slightly different approaches. You may have more fast-moving sites like one of ours, Mental Floss, where actually we just want to monetize the user as quickly as possible. And that could be a job for Resonance versus a site like Carbuy or AutoExpress or The Week, where someone will come back day in, day out, and we want to engage with that message. So Speak to Suppliers is a big one. Keep an eye on the platforms. We've got Google going to speak next, but they are, and Facebook to many extent, and WPP, and I would class them as a platform considering the amount of agencies they own. They are the ones who can really control this. It will take a few changes by Google to make a significant difference to everyone in the room. So they could take, if they wanted to, AdBlock Plus out the Chrome store. But obviously, they need to stand up for the user. And it'll be really interesting to see what they do with AMP, and especially AMP for ads, which I know we're going to hear about very shortly. Soft messages don't work at all. They are a complete waste of time. Go for the hard ones. They will absolutely change what users do on your site. Ensure that you've got a proper testing framework. I mentioned before, if you're not talking about cohorts or your supplier isn't, you have no way to track if that user has gone on to keep their ad blocker switched off when they revisit your site, or any other change to that cohort. So you have to create cohorts of users. You may actually find that some are more valuable at different times of the day. So we did a piece of analysis on AutoExpress where we looked at time of day ad block rates. They varied massively. So anywhere between 1 in the morning to 3, much higher rate, which would typically indicate you've got a slightly younger audience. But during 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, you've got a really low ad block rate. So that's when you should predominantly start serving out your premium campaigns. There's a lot of strategies you can use to get around it. Test hypothesis, not hunches. So come up with proper statistical statistically backed theories that you can test with your platforms. It needs dev resource, it needs product resource, it needs management resource. You know, if you're not talking about this at your board, you should be, undoubtedly. Share information, we're all in it together. I know everyone does the Digiday pieces, the drum pieces, which is great. We're talking about it at AOP forums. I can't stress that enough. We're at Denis going to, with SourcePoint, produce some data very shortly on what we're seeing across a number of different verticals and different audiences. And make sure you're diversifying your revenues. So, as we all know, display is under significant pressure and has been. But for Denis, it's still the predominant revenue stream. So that 14% at the start puts that under significant risk. So we need to take all the steps we can to mitigate that. Hence, we now sell cars, so we've got Buy a Car as a site. We're making a massive push into e-commerce. That user interaction and that transaction element is where you can protect the money and it's immune to ad blocking. So they're the kind of strategies you need to be looking at as a publisher. More than happy to talk about them, and I think as everyone in the room is concerned about this, hence the number of people here, it will undoubtedly be a problem for many years to come that we need to work up a proper solution for and response to. Thank you.